Hi, this is Brenda Dozier, the Crop Training Coordinator, and today I would like to introduce a new insurance product available for 2016, and that is the Pasture Rangeland Forage Rainfall Index Plan of Insurance. This new plan of insurance for rainfall index associated with pasture, rangeland, and forage acres is area-based, or in other words, actually grid-based. And it's going to protect the perennial pasture, rangeland, or forage used to feed livestock. Again, it's based on precipitation. That's why it's called Rainfall Index. And it uses the NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, for the daily precipitation data. Rainfall Index is a risk management tool to insure against a decline in an index value that is based on the long-term historical average precipitation for the grid and the index intervals that it's associated with. And this rainfall index payments are generated when the grid's deviation from normal is under your trigger. They are considering normal rainfall at 100%. So again, if normal is 100, we would have to be below normal for there to be a rainfall index loss. They have historical data all the way back to 1948 to present that we'll look at here. The PRF, I'll just abbreviate that for pasture, rangeland, and forage. The PRF crop year is from January 1st to December 31st. And again, as I mentioned, the area is a grid, which is 0.25 degrees latitude by 0.25 degrees longitude, or another way of saying it, 12 miles by 12-mile grids. The next element involved in the rainfall index is selecting your intervals. These are 2-month periods, and you'll see them listed here, January, February, March. There's 11 choices. This plan of insurance, you must select a minimum of 2 intervals with a maximum of 6 intervals. Again, if you would pick all 6, that would cover you for the entire year of January 1st through December 31st. And then you would allocate the percent between the intervals selected. And again, I will show some examples of that here later. These percentages for one interval cannot exceed 60% or be less than 10%. These intervals that are selected for coverage are mutually exclusive. That means each interval is rated separate. It's like having a little mini insurance period. And one interval does not affect another interval. Another thing to remember on our rainfall index coverage for pasture, rangeland, and forages, you are not required to insure all the acres. A producer can just insure only the acres that they feel are important to their haying or grazing operation. So when it comes to purchasing a PRF rainfall index policy, we've got coverage levels to select. The choices there are 70, 75, 80, 85, and 90. We have to pick a productivity factor, and that is any percentage in 1% increments between 60 and 150. And then there is a county base value that is stated in the actuarials, and I'll show you that for whether your intended use is haying or your intended use is grazing. This is just a screenshot of the actuarial for PRF Rainfall Index for Woodford County, Illinois. And this is what I was sharing with you, that we've got the grazing intended use, and that has a county base value of $91. Or we have the haying intended use, and it has a county base value of $363. So this is an example for Woodford County haying coverage. If the customer was to select a 90% coverage level and a 150% productivity factor, and we just saw that the base value is $363, that equation then says my protection per acre would be $490.05. Again, you can select the amount of acres you want to insure. In my example, I am insuring 12 acres and 100% share for those 12 acres. I had mentioned before, then you have to select your intervals and give those intervals a percentage. My example here is choosing the March-April interval and putting 50% value there, and the July-August interval and putting 50% value on that. So now to come up with the many insurance coverages that I was talking about, then my March-April index interval really has $2,940.30 protection, and my July-August interval has $2,940.30 protection as well, for a grand total policy protection of adding up my two intervals for $58.80 and 60 cents. Now, how would I know if there is a loss? Well, again, Rainfall Index covers a single peril, the lack of precipitation. So when the final grid index falls below the trigger grid index, then indemnity payments are earned. Again, just reminding you that an index of 100% represents average precipitation. Therefore, below 100 is below average precipitation, and an index above 100 represents above average precipitation. Producers who purchase a Rainfall Index policy for their pasture, rangeland, or forage do not need to submit a loss notice. RMA will announce the final grid indexes 60 days after the interval, and then the company will process the indemnities that are due. Here then is an example loss that I took a 90 coverage level, so my trigger grid index is a 90, and they have now announced the final grid index for each of the intervals. For the March-April, you can see that is 55.7, and for the July-August, it's 138.4. So, again, we will work the loss according to each interval. So on my March-April index interval, I have a trigger of 90, and they announced 55.7. That is under. I take 90 minus 55.7 and divide back by 90, and I get a factor of 0.381. You then take that factor of 381 times my protection for the interval, and I then would be paid a $1,120 loss for the March-April interval. As for the July-August interval, they announced that at 138.4. That is greater than my 90 trigger, therefore no indemnity due. Okay. Now to help you with all the risk management agency tools for Pasture, Rangeland, Forage, the Rainfall Index. I have the website listed for you here. You need to go here and click on the grid locator. You can, on this grid locator, enter a name, an address, or a latitude, longitude value. So then you zoom in to your point of reference, which is literally the physical location of the field. Once you have zoomed in to the physical location of the field, you will then see it labels your point of reference with a grid ID. In my example here, the grid ID is 24764 in Woodford County, Illinois. Now that I know that my grid ID, then I can proceed on with the other decision tools on the RMA website, and I'm going to demonstrate each of those. The next important thing to look at is the historical rainfall. Again, there's data all the way back to 1948, and it is interesting then to see by putting in your state, county, and your grid number, whether you're haying or grazing intended use, you're irrigated or non-irrigated, and then put in your what-if coverage level, productivity factor, your percent share, the insured acres. You can then see in these columns here of what the historical rainfall has been. For instance, I'm just going to look at the March-April column, and you can look that in 2015, 55.7, under, 14, under. 2013 is over, 2012 under, 11 over, under. Again, this is to just show the historical rainfall. So find the different index intervals, the months that your customer is concerned with, to look at the historical rainfall. The other decision tool then just puts what-if examples for you. In my example here, I said, if I had this policy in 2014, what would it have paid? And I had put my 50% of my value in March, April, and the other 50% in July, August, get my protection per acre. And if I would have had this policy back in 2014, it would have showed the indemnity for the March, April interval, and then no indemnity for the July, August interval. And again, you can change the sample year here and look at how it would have performed in any of the years. Also, the cost estimator tool on RMA's website. Need to run a quick estimate so that you can inform the customer of what this product would cost. Real simple, to fill in the blanks for your commodity is PRF and what county, what intended use, haying or grazing, and then very important to put in your grid ID, your productivity factor that you've selected, and the insured share, and the total insured acres. Again, then, put your percentage for your intervals that must add up to then 100, and hit calculate, and you will get a quote here showing what all the different coverage levels cost for this 2 interval for the haying intended use in Woodford County for 2016. Important dates on our PRF Rainfall Index policy. We've got a sales closing deadline and acreage reporting deadline all in one as November 15th. Again, I will show you then here in a little bit some sample applications and sample acreage reports. Again, very important, November 15th deadline to purchase the PRF Rainfall Index. And then the premium will be billed to the customer on September 1. These PRF Rainfall Index premiums are subsidized, so I'm just showing you here the subsidy factors. And they also carry administrative fee of $30 for each county. Here is the sample PRF Rainfall Index application. The plan of insurance is Rainfall Index. The county, the crop is PRF, Pasture, Rangeland, and Forage. Must indicate the intended use. So my example here is haying for Woodford County, the 90 coverage level, the 150% productivity factor, and then that amount of insurance out of the county actuarials of $363. Just showing another example, if I also wanted Rainfall Index plan of insurance for my McLean County, Pasture, Rangeland, and Forage, because I have grazing intended use there with a 90 coverage level, the 150 productivity factor, and that has a $91 value out of the county actuarials. A disclaimer, a Rainfall Index disclaimer is required with the application. This disclaimer just acknowledges that the customer buying the policy realizes that this is based on the grid using NOAA data, and that it is possible to have a low crop production or receive low precipitation on my acreage, but that doesn't insure against your precipitation received on your farm. Again, it is all on the grids, and the index, the final index is announced by RMA using NOAA. Then I'm showing you here a sample PRF Rainfall Index acreage report. It's due November 15th with the application, and you identify the PRF is your crop. You identify your index intervals and your intended use. Of course, the county, the grid ID, and your productivity factor, and indicate your total acres, your percent share, your percent value that you're putting in that interval, and for each of the intervals you're selecting. So my example here, you'll see my second interval, the July-August. Again, it's located in the same grid, my same 12 acres, putting just the other 50% of the value on the second interval there. Then there's one further step on the acreage report, and that is to identify the CLUs, that farm number, tract number, field, that adds up to your total insurable acres. So then we've got the CLU detail information here showing that line 1, grid 24764, which is my March-April interval, to arrive at my grand total 12 acres, it is 2 fields, farm number 1621, tract 462, field 1 and field 2. And then again, those same 2 fields are my total 12 acres that I'm putting the other half in my July-August interval. This concludes my description of the Pasture Rangeland Forage Rainfall Index coverage that's available for the 2016 crop year. If you have any questions, please contact Crop Underwriting at toll-free 1-877-274-9800. Thank you.